Welcome to Rob and Tony's Cinematic Adventure. I'm Rob Wilson.
And I am Tony the Quano.
So, Tony.
Yes, Rob?
We announced last episode that there's some sad news regarding...
very sad news.
Regarding one of the finest actors to ever grace Hollywood.
Right. Yeah, not just his generation, but just Hollywood, period.
And that is the passing of the great Gene Hackman.
Great Gene Hackman. I love Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman was amazing. So, we have a little tribute episode that we're doing for him. What movie are we doing this time?
Well, so we spent some time thinking about this because there's so many Gene Hackman movies you could pick from.
Yes.
And he won 2 Oscars. We just had our Oscar series, and strangely enough, I shouldn't say strangely, I guess, but both movies that he won for were also won Best Picture, and so we kind of eliminated those two. So it's not The French Connection, it's not Unforgiven, and so we played around. We had a few choices, and we decided to go back to a time when O.J. Simpson was on trial for killing his ex-wife and her boyfriend.
Allegedly.
Hey. If Norm Macdonald said he did it, he did it.
If the guy writes a book on if I did it, this is how I would do it.
A time when Michael Jordan was playing baseball. A time when people flocked to the theaters to see Val Kilmer as Batman. And where George Clooney was dominating TV. That year is 1995. And that movie is Crimson Tide.
Crimson Tide. The submarine classic. Also starring Denzel Washington and Viggo Mortensen.
Denzel Washington. Yeah, it's kind of a
James Gandolfini,
pretty famous Viggo Mortensen and James Gandolfini, Jason Robards, and a small cameo at the end, just uncredited. George Zunza, who at the time I also knew for Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer and Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise.
Yes,
and directed by Tony Scott, who I don't think we've done a Tony Scott movie yet.
We have not done a Tony Scott movie yet. We've done a Ridley Scott movie, but we haven't done Tony Scott yet.
Done a couple of Ridley Scott movies.
Because we haven't done Top Gun yet. We've
discussed Last Boy Scout, doing that. But yeah, this is our first Tony Scott movie. But yeah, the submarine classic. Up there with Hunt for Red October, Das Boot.
U-571.
U-571. Down Periscope. Kelsey Grammer, it's hard to go wrong with Down Periscope. I did see Down Periscope.
Oh, nice. See, I never saw Down Periscope.
Yes. I don't remember a whole lot about Down Periscope.
Maybe we should do it sometime.
I don't know. So, anyway, yeah. So we laid it on Crimson Tide. And, I think, we talked about Quick and the Dead, Enemy of the State, Heist. There's so many others, like Hoosiers, The Royal Tannenbaums, The Conversation. It just goes on and on and on because he's just like, heck, I would have done The Replacements. I mean, it's a kind of a bad football movie, but Gene Hackman's good in it.
Or Superman 4.
Yes, we have done a Gene Hackman movie, right? Yeah,
yes, we have. We did Superman. But yeah.
So, yeah, Superman 4, Quest for Peace.
I mean, horrible movie, but Gene Hackman was Gene Hackman in it. He was great.
It doesn't matter what movie. The Birdcage. Love him in The Birdcage. He's always terrific. And he's terrific in this. And he's like kind of, I guess Denzel Washington is how old was Denzel Washington when they made this movie? Because he'd been around for about a decade now. This is almost 10 years after Cry Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been about 40 years old.
Yeah, he was born in 54, so yeah, he would have been.
Yeah. So wasn't really a young actor at that time, but younger than Gene Hackman, obviously. By about 30 years, about 25 years, I guess. And what a great pairing.
Yeah.
They go toe-to-toe with each other in this movie, and they're both terrific in it. And I was thinking about it, because this is the first time I've seen it in 25 years, probably. 20 years, I don't know.
It's the first time I've seen it one other time.
I think it's one of the better Denzel Washington performances.
It is. Yeah, I would agree.
He was nominated for this movie. Neither was Gene Hackman. But I think there's a lot of Denzel Washington roles where, okay, he was good, but I don't know, I would say he was great. I think there's a lot of Denzel movies where he kind of plays a variation of Denzel.
Yeah.
Which is fine, because, he's a very, very good actor. We discussed that in our Gladiator 2 episode.
Yes, we did.
A couple months ago. But I like him a lot better in this.
Yeah, I thought he was great in this.
Yeah, they're both fantastic. They really are what make the movie.
Yes, they are.
I mean, there's other aspects of it also. But it's funny. The movie seems like it's a quarter of submarine shots underwater, and the other 3/4 is Denzel and Gene Hackman kind of sparring with each other. Well, I shouldn't say sparring with each other, but kind of the whole leads up to that showdown, so to speak. So. And I realized we mentioned a few of the bigger name co-stars like Viggo Mortensen, James Gandolfini, and at some point along the way, I discovered that this was a earlier Viggo Mortensen role. And since we're talking about Denzel, right, Viggo Mortensen's a few years younger than Denzel. And let's see, that's right, because Viggo Mortensen was in Carlito's Way a couple of years before this. But yeah, kind of an early role for him in terms of a larger role.
Yep.
And then I didn't know that James Gandolfini was in it. And George Zunza. So this is a name I remember from the 90s, basically because of this movie and Dangerous Minds, as we spoke about earlier. I was looking him up, and I didn't realize that he did a bunch of voice work also. Particularly, we mentioned Superman. He was on the Superman animated TV series as Perry White.
Perry White.
But he was also on the Batman animated series as Arnold Wesker, a.k.a. the ventriloquist. So, yeah, I didn't realize how deep some of his work went. Apparently in the 2000s, he was even a recurring guest on Grey's Anatomy. And now he's kind of retired. He's like working in Astoria, Oregon as a theater director. It's like, you know what? I've done my acting. I want to direct theater in the town where Kindergarten Cop was filmed.
Yes.
Which I think we will be doing Kindergarten Cop one day.
Absolutely. Absolutely we will.
There might be some other Arnold movies to get through before that. But Jason Robards is in this. Hans Zimmer score, right? We've done a lot of Hans Zimmer movies.
Yep.
I think he liked working for the Scott brothers. A few other actors, but Matt Craven had a lot of character work. A very young Steve Zahn and Ryan Philippe, right?
Yep. They don't have a huge role in this movie.
No. Steve Zahn kind of has more of a noticeable role.
Yes.
Not a big role, but it's a key point in the movie. And then, might as well just bring this up since this was discussed recently. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Film Editing, Sound, and Sound Editing. And it lost editing to Apollo 13, and it lost Sound Awards to Braveheart.
Interesting. It also has Danny Nucci, who we've already talked about a movie with him in it.
And The Rock.
Talked about The Rock.
So, if you want to go back and listen to our The Rock episode, you can go back and listen to The Rock. Movies is produced by the same people. Yep. Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, who were that's like classic 90s, is the two of them.
Oh, yeah.
The Thunderbolt logo going down. And
Yep. And
they had movies like this and The Rock, and they had movies like, Armageddon.
And I noticed, right off the bat on this one, whatever happened to Hollywood Pictures?
Yes. You know what? I'm glad he brought this up. That's the first thing I thought about.
Yeah, because I see. I'm like,
I remember
the Sphinx. The Sphinx. We haven't seen the Sphinx in years. What happened to Hollywood Pictures?
Let's see. It closed in 2007.
Okay.
And I forgot about this. It's a movie that we've talked about doing. Its most successful movie was The Sixth Sense. But its last movie was The Invisible.
The Invisible.
One of the other ones was Saw 3. It was one of the last ones that it did. But yeah, it was funny. It was really, most of the last movies was around 2000, and then it was reactivated briefly for a few low budget movies. And then Disney stopped distributing under the label to focus on their core brands: Disney, Touchstone, ABC, ESPN, and Pixar.
Okay. I guess that's what happened to Hollywood Pictures.
So, yeah, no, it was just a staple of the 90s.
Yeah. And this movie starts out, Tony Scott had his own style of...
Oh, yes.
All directors have their own style, but Tony Scott had a very recognizable style, and it started out in the same way as other great 90s movies.
It's a very it's funny. It's a very
very 90s
90s movie, but at the same time, once you kind of get in the thick of the movie, because the acting is so good, you get absorbed in the story of that, and it's okay, so it's not super dated, and it's funny because it's actually kind of time appropriate for right now.
Yeah, it is.
What's going on with Russia? So
it is.
It's a very Russian centric movie, and particularly about a less than savory Russian leader. So yeah, no, it's very Tony Scott. Especially at the beginning, like you said, these kind of quick edits with voiceover, something that's happening, and it's...
The beginning reminded me of the opening scenes in The Rock.
Yes, very much so.
That was Michael Bay.
Bay, but still similar style. And it's funny.
It's that 90s military movie type.
Yeah. There's a lot of green in this movie. There's a lot of green in The Rock. It's just with eagle eyes. And yeah. And like, again, like Hans Zimmer, just, I mean, his score, like he's very varied in his scores, but he knows how to fit his directors and that style. And as you're saying, it's kind of that military style because it's a movie about, nuclear submarines, which, we'll get into various specifics as we dive into the movie. Like Hans Zimmer, did he do any other Tony Scott or Michael Bay? Well, I know he did, some Ridley Scott movies. What other like military movies did he score? Discography. Can't we just call it a film? I get why they're calling it discography because it's technically music, but Days of Thunder, okay, that's Tony Scott. True Romance, which is Tony Scott. So here's what I didn't realize about this movie also. I've spent all these years, I had no idea that Quentin Tarantino did on-credit script writing on this movie.
On this movie?
Yes.
Really?
And
I did not know that.
I think if you start to think about it, I think you can figure out which scenes he wrote. But yeah, and it's funny because like True Romance, which is a Tony Scott movie, was written by Quentin Tarantino.
Yes, it was.
And it's like early, like in the 90s, like Tarantino would write some screenplays that he did not direct. And apparently he was doing some script work on movies that he got uncredited for also.
Huh.
Yeah, and apparently he had tensions with Denzel Washington on set. I don't know how true that part is, but yeah. That's right. I forgot he was doing the Dune movies. The first Dune. The Ring. I had no idea he did the score for The Ring. Yeah, Hannibal, which makes sense. That's Ridley Scott. Mission Impossible 2. The Thin Red Line. As Good as It Gets. The Peacemaker. The Fan, which is another... That's Tony Scott. Yeah, that's Tony Scott. He did the score for The Rock, which we talked about. Oh, he did the score for Muppets Treasure Island.
Oh.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Drop Zone. That's another 90s action. Oh my goodness. He did the score for Renaissance Man.
Nice.
Danny DeVito. Maybe we should do Twins one day. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure we will. And Junior. All those Schwarzenegger DeVito
So
joints.
This is not the same movie that I was going to say because he composed the score for K2. Not to be confused with K-19, the Widowmaker, which is another submarine movie. Mm-hmm. But K2, like in the mountain. But looky there, Driving Miss Daisy.
Oh, look.
Yeah, overall, like I said, it's a very 90s type. It's not really an action movie. It's more of an action-oriented thriller.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, they kind of have your more, like we was talking about, Silence of the Lambs is more of a thriller.
Yes.
Right? That's different than the type of thriller that Crimson Tide is. Right?
Yeah.
Which there's some action in it. But again, like it's on a submarine. You're not going to have any gunshots on a submarine.
No.
At least I hope not.
Although they do come close sometimes.
Yeah, they do. I mean, the movie does get a little ridiculous and far-fetched, which is fine.
A little bit, but it's a movie. It's
a 90s action movie directed by Tony Scott and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer.
Yeah,
like,
so of course
you're going to have that, and you overlook it because what you're there for is Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman just going at it, and the tension between the two. And they deliver in spades.
Yes, they do.
It makes it a worthwhile watch.
Yes, absolutely. I had never seen this movie before today when I watched it, and I was pleasantly surprised. Like I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would not call it a great movie. I could see why a lot of people might want to come back to it. Mm-hmm. It's also a movie that I could easily see being one that just like if we talked about it before, it's one of those ones. Maybe you're flipping through a television, and it's just happens to be on. Like what? It's a rainy Saturday. I got nothing to do. And it's halfway through Crimson Tide. I'm going to watch the rest of Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's I wouldn't call it a great movie either, but it's good. It's enjoyable. It does everything that you would like a movie to do, and really the performances are incredible in it.
Yeah, you're there for the two of them. I mean, the cover art is basically just, Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman in a bunch of red.
Yeah.
And that's basically what you get with this movie.
Yeah.
And I always kind of wondered, it's an aspect of the movie I forgot when I watched it. Or at least it's like, okay, well, why is this called Crimson Tide? And we'll get to why it's called Crimson Tide. And it's interesting that they decided to call it Crimson Tide based off this one little fact about the movie.
Okay. So the Crimson part has nothing to do with the Russians?
Well, I think there's a part of that's there, yes. But I guess there's two factors. It's the Russians and then has to do with the submarine's name as well.
Ah.
Yes.
Okay.
So. Also, as a point, it was I think the 9th, or I'm trying to remember, it was right around the 10th spot in terms of the highest grossing movies of 1995, in terms of like North America box office. So
all right.
It was well received with audiences at the time, did well at the box office, which, there was a time where you could put up like an R-rated kind of thrill like this, and people would go to it and see it in the theater. It helps that Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington were in it, but
yeah,
feels like one of those movies that release it today, they'd be like, all right, we're going to release this and we're going to put it on streaming in a month. Please stop doing that crap. extend your theatrical release windows.
Yes.
Let people watch movies on the big screen.
Like they're meant to be watched.
Please, please, please.
Yes. And also, don't get rid of physical media.
Yes. No. That's a little stump speech, but it's one of the factors that I think was a good focus on during the award ceremony for the Oscars this year.
Yeah.
They had multiple points of reference there about actual theater experience.
Yep.
Let's bring that back. Anyway, so yeah, I think as you said, like this is your first time watching it. This is my second time, I believe. Yeah, I think the first time might have been in high school or when I bought the Rock Crimson Tide combo and I watched that. But I think I only watched The Rock when I bought that.
Huh.
I don't think I watched Crimson Tide.
Okay.
So I've been waiting to watch this for a little while. So yes.
Well, I guess, do you want to get into it?
Yeah, let's jump in.
All right, before we get started, as always, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about this entire movie, beginning, middle, and end. So if you've not seen it and you don't want to be spoiled, pause the podcast, go watch the movie and come back and listen. If you have seen the movie or you just don't mind being spoiled, then keep on listening. But you have been warned, we will be spoiling this movie. So we start out with...
Well, Hollywood Pictures.
Hollywood Pictures, yes.
We
start out with Hollywood
the first
Pictures.
note I have.
Yes.
Hollywood Pictures.
Hollywood Pictures. The Hollywood Pictures logo pops up. It's a great logo.
It's a great
It
logo.
really is.
And then the next thing is like it's Hollywood Pictures, and like they choose the Sphinx.
Yes.
They don't choose the Hollywood sign.
No. I was wondering the same thing. Why did they choose the Sphinx? that as soon as the Hollywood Pictures sign came up, I'm like, wow, it's why is it the Sphinx? And why have I never thought about this before? This is all going through my head as the Hollywood Pictures logo was popping up on the screen.
That's my notes. Hollywood Pictures, but Sphinx.
Because, the Hollywood sign would have been a perfect logo for it, too. But, I mean, hey, they wanted to use a Sphinx.
It's
so
distinctive. It's like it's got the blue glow in the background behind the Sphinx. And then it's like the Simpson Bruckheimer logo, which we talked about, was like iconic in the 90s also.
Yep.
They directed so many action movies at that time. But then, it starts with like your basic kind of like...
We have a text card.
A little bit info dump. Text card, yeah.
So we get across the screen, it says, the three most powerful men in the world, the President of the United States, the President of the Russian Republic, and the captain of a U.S. nuclear missile submarine.
I mean, it just tells you right away. It's what the U.S. president has almost nothing to do with this movie, actually.
Well, I mean, the U.S. president is the one that sent the order to fire, but and then also who sent the order to abort.
Yes, he did.
But he's mentioned a few times.
Yes,
but
not nearly as much as the Russian.
Yeah.
Or the commander of the nuclear submarine.
Yeah.
And then what happens after that is they just drop us in the Mediterranean and we're on a French aircraft carrier.
Yes, on a French aircraft carrier with a reporter from CNN. And he's talking about stuff. And then we see the president briefly in a little montage as he's going through his little speech, as the reporter is going through his little speech. And the president at the time is the real life president at the time, Bill Clinton.
This is also in a time before we knew that the president of the United States did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
Yes, this was before that came out. But so then it goes to a child's birthday party.
And there's a magician.
There's a magician who, I kind of laughed at this part because he's got all the kids yelling abracadabra. And then he makes a little bird appear, but shoots a little bit of fire out of his hand to make the bird appear. And one of the kids, just blurts out, "He shot fire!"
I always find it kind of like there's this trope that I don't know if it's a trope. Maybe it's not a trope. I don't know. But there's movies where there's like if there's a kid's birthday party, there's a magician.
Yeah.
I've never been to a kid's birthday party with a magician.
Me neither.
I've been to events that are geared towards kids that have magicians. I have never been to a birthday party with a magician.
I did Taekwondo at a kid's birthday party once.
Okay.
But I wasn't a magician. I was just kicking stuff and breaking boards and stuff like that. But
like even like clowns, like you see clowns sometimes that like not many people actually bring a clown to their house.
No. Rich people do with their kids' birthdays.
Maybe that's it. But this guy, he's not that high in the Navy yet. He can't be that rich.
Yeah.
Unless his wife does, so I don't know. But
yeah, it turns out
this is Denzel Washington's daughter.
Yeah.
Daughter's
Denzel
birthday,
Washington's
right? Yeah.
daughter's birthday.
She's the one that volunteers, and she gets picked because she's the birthday girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, so then he goes into the kitchen, and there's Viggo Mortensen there, and they obviously they work together in the Navy.
He's watching the news, which
They're watching the news.
Here's another question I had about this. So the kitchen is right next to the living room where all the kids are.
Yes.
And the magician. The TV is sitting on the kitchen counter, and the TV's turned up really loud.
Yes, it is.
Wouldn't that disturb the party that's going on?
It's like, hey, Aragorn, cut fucking CNN.
Yeah.
It's like, I need to watch Larry King.
Yeah, I mean, there's this fun kid's birthday party with a magician going on in the living room, and 10 feet away
is watching CNN.
10 feet away, there's a TV with CNN talking about how war is imminent.
By the way, I thought about this watching this movie after I watched the movie, actually. So this is pretty much the last time you see a woman in this movie. It made me think.
It is. I didn't know. I wasn't thinking about that, but yeah.
So it made me think of Justin Long and Seth Rogen and movies with all male cast. And they reference Glengarry Glen Ross, which is an all male cast. And this movie is essentially an all male cast.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it is like a military movie. So a lot of times we'll have all male cast. Like you think about like Saving Private Ryan, there's a few like women in that movie that are like villagers and such, but yeah. So yeah,
no
after
major
this,
roles,
yeah, there's no major roles for a woman in this movie.
Yeah, I mean
unless you count Tony Soprano a woman, which I don't think he allows that.
Yeah, but yeah, because you pretty much just have Denzel's wife and daughter, and they're just in the beginning of the movie.
But yeah, it's the kind of the classic scene though. At this point, like they're watching this thing about the news, and it's like, oh, looks like we might have to go to war. And then right on cue, the phone rings.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And our next scene, it's Denzel. Right. Well, I guess we use his name. Who's his character name?
Hunter.
Got off my IMDb page.
Lieutenant Commander Hunter.
Page, right, and he's there in the office of Captain Frank Ramsey, played by Gene Hackman. And so they're being deployed. He's a submarine commander, and they're being deployed out. Getting orders from the commander in chief, and just in case that the skirmish within the Russians is that this Russian forces that are trying to oppose the Russian leader.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's taking over territory, and he might fire nukes at his people that are trying to resist him in Russia, and maybe against the U.S. also.
Yeah.
So obviously they deploy a nuclear submarine to potentially resist this.
Yes, to fire a nuke if need be
at their bases where at the Russian bases, right? That's the gist of it. However, his executive officer that he normally has, his appendix burst, so he's in the hospital. Yeah,
so he's unable to
surgery.
Go on the submarine ride with Gene Hackman.
And so it's kind of like a little bit of an interview, because he has a short list of people that have been highly recommended to him.
Mm-hmm. And Denzel Washington Hunter is at the top of that list.
Yes.
Now, how short was this list? Because he first tells him that Hunter was on the top of his list, and then Hunter, he seems, he seems appreciative of that, and thanks him. And he's like, "It's a short list."
Yes.
So
was it one person?
Was it? Two? Yeah, exactly. Was it one person? Was he the only one on the list, or were there like 2 or 3 other people on there?
I would say I would imagine no more than 3 or 4 people, right?
Yeah.
I want to mention one other note I saw on here. I was looking quickly. It's not just the phone that rings. A beeper goes off also.
Yeah.
There's also a beeper.
This was
it's
95.
the 90s. It'd be a beeper.
This was 95. 94, probably 94 when they filmed it.
Yes.
And
I want to mention briefly I like the name, the ultra nationalist leader of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Radchenko.
Yes.
Right. Right. And I mean, the whole idea is that he wants to actually go against the Russian president. Right. Because he thinks that the Russian president is a puppet of good old William Jefferson Clinton. Right. So that just to throw a little bit more kind of context within that. Yeah, that's all kind of info dump that the anchor from CNN gives us. Right. But yeah, it's a short list, and he even has this little. Here's a little the small flourishes I like that. I think both kind of do a good job of putting into the characters. Because I think the fascinating thing about this is that once you go into this, that the entire movie is going to be set up that they're going to butt heads with each other.
Yes.
And the movie never specifically chooses a side. It kind of comes close to doing it.
Yep.
But it doesn't make either one an actual villain. I do think there is a villain in this movie, which I'll get to. But yeah, it gives enough little details to their characters, and they both add into it. And some of it's just kind of general talk. He's asking. Ramsey's asking Hunter about interest, and Hunter's like, "Oh, I ride horses."
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, specifically Arabian.
Well, Arabian is one of the ones that he mentioned.
Yes.
That what's the greatest horse you've ever ridden? And he said Arabian.
And he says, he would never be he could never. I forget how then Ramsey puts how he would never be able to actually ride a horse. But
he would never be able to ride a Arabian.
Okay,
he said
that's right.
Give me an old paint any day.
That's what he says, right?
But yeah,
I love
doesn't have the skill to ride an Arabian.
Like any good kind of action-oriented movie in the 90s, there's always a few kind of funny one-liners involving the F-bomb.
Yeah.
they're teenage girls. They all know you want to fuck them.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the way he brings it. And then his little character touch is that he has a Jack Russell.
Yep. He's
the most intelligent of dogs, is what he says.
He said he goes everywhere with him.
And he goes, and he does go everywhere.
He does go everywhere with him. We find out that he takes him on the
submarine.
Yeah.
And guess what? As we find later, obviously, the submarine, you can't take a dog out and take a shit.
Nope. Nope. You can't just open up the door and let him out.
Thankfully, Jack Russell's are kind of independent, so they can just do what they want to do, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. And they're relatively small, so they don't take up much space.
Yeah. Can't bring a Great Dane on the submarine.
No.
Or a Mastiff. Rhodesian Roadhound. Yeah. Jack Russell, Dachshunds, little Chihuahuas. They all work, but
Why didn't they make a Beethoven movie on a sub?
Beethoven's 4. That's what, an old paint. Yeah, horses are fascinating animals. That's what Oh, that's right. He does call them dumb. He calls them dumb, but they're intuitive. They're not too different from high school girls. Might not have a brain in their head, but they do know all the boys want to fuck them.
Yeah,
that's the line right there.
Yeah,
right. And then he. The dog's name is Bear.
Yes,
The dog's
that's
name is
right.
Bear.
The dog's name is Bear.
So yeah, because and he gets he congratulates him right there. Right, he's like,
Yeah.
welcome aboard.
Yeah.
And then what we get, like, I think we get a little like news interview of Radchenko, but what's my next thing I have on here?
Yeah. So then he takes him down. Ramsey takes Hunter down to meet the men.
That's right. Yes.
And
And
so
we
he
got
takes him
four in
down,
particular here.
introduces him as his new XO.
We got Bobby, who's played by James Gandolfini. You got Linklater, which is Scott Burkholder.
You got Westergaard, who's Rocky Carroll.
And then lastly, you have Zimmer, who is Matt Craven. So, yeah, you kind of introduce to them, and then they get on their bus where they're going to go and be transported to the submarine where they're going to ship off. And I love how there's a fat black guy that's all gets on the board. That's like new. James Gandolfini's got to be the one that fucks with.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm gonna say. James Gandolfini, to me, if you're gonna pick any one of them, that's actually the villain of this story. It's James Gandolfini.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He's the one that instigates a lot of the stuff that comes much more to the head than it needs to be.
Yes. Yes. Now, as far as like a full-blown villain,
no,
not really. No, but he is the most antagonistic of the characters in this movie.
He's one of the most least likable people in this movie.
Yes.
Maybe the most least likable character in this movie.
Yeah.
Because he just makes the guy do push-ups for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's no, you can't make me do that.
And I mean, he tells him to drop and give it 20. He does 5 and then collapses. So how did he make it through boot camp if he can't do more than 5 push-ups?
Because he's new. Yeah, he would have been pretty fresh out of boot camp.
Yeah, but he would have been doing tons of push-ups in boot camp.
It's like, Vincent D'Onofrio in Full Metal Jacket.
Mm-hmm.
it would have gone something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting movie to do as well.
It would be.
We need to do some other Kubrick movies. Maybe it's the next one. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
I don't know. But anyway, so they get on the bus and they're going to the sub. I love this. They're on the sub. The sub is sailing out.
Well, even before it sails out, he gives, Ramsey gives a pep talk to everybody before they get on the sub, right? And of course, it's in the rain. It's always in the rain.
Yes.
It's at night.
Always in the rain.
Right. And then we get to the point where once they're kind of on board and they're shipping out, it's obviously the next day, but it's getting towards sunset.
And we have one more scene with Denzel and his family in the car where they're dropping him off.
That's right.
So he says goodbye to his wife and kids, and
this is the last scene with any woman in the movie.
Yeah. So he tells his son that he's worried about the dog because he's going to think that he's leaving forever, and the son promises that he'll take care of him.
You're the man of the house now.
So, yeah, so he kisses his wife and kids and goes to meet up with Ramsey. And then Ramsey gives a speech and all that in the rain.
He calls them his little ducks.
Yes, he calls them his little ducks. Then they get on the sub and they ship out, and I love this. They're sitting, they're standing up at the top of the sub. It hadn't submerged yet, and they're just looking at the sunrise. And Gene Hackman's got a cigar. Ramsey's smoking a cigar, and he hands one to Hunter.
It's kind of like Independence Day in a way. It's like
yeah. Hunter takes a puff And then Ramsey asks him how it is. And he's like, it's good. He's like, your first one, isn't it? He's like, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I think Denzel plays these scenes well because like he doesn't like he's trying to figure out how he should react. He's trying to make a good impression because he has that ambition himself to be in that position one day.
Yeah, but in the interview,
he realizes this is a big opportunity.
Yeah. And Ramsey tells him, don't try to impress me. Just do your job.
Yes.
If you want to impress me, just do your job. Don't be a yes man.
He doesn't need a yes man, or doesn't need to be someone. He also doesn't want someone that's trying to define him all. Well, that's not what he says. But anyway, he doesn't need. He doesn't need the yes man or the kiss ass.
Yeah.
So.
And he doesn't get either of those.
He does not. And then he says it's his favorite part as they're watching the sun. He watches the sun as they submerge below the surface. And so this is actually where it kind of comes into play about the title for the movie, Crimson Tide. So we mentioned, like, obviously you kind of think of the Reds with the Russians. So the Crimson.
Yeah. There's also the red coming from the sunrise.
The red from the sunrise. And lastly, the submarine is the USS Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
The University of Alabama, their nickname is the Crimson Tide.
Yes, it is.
And so I always was kind of curious, like, okay, I mean, I get the Russian aspect, but still, it's a curious name. And then, like, it makes sense when I was watching this time. It's like, oh, that's where it comes from. And Gene Hackman, once the down below on the ship, he's almost always wearing his USS Alabama hat.
Yes, his red USS Alabama hat.
Yeah. There's a few times where he's in his own bunk where he's not wearing it. He takes it off. But if he's out on the ship among his men, he's wearing that hat.
Mm-hmm.
There's other little flourishes that I like. I can't remember if it was in his office or was at some point somewhere on. I want to say it's in Denzel's bunk. He has at some point you see a flag. It's not just the American flag. They have the state of Washington flag, right? So the state of Washington flag is very unique. It's one of the more unique ones.
That was in Ramsey's bunk.
So
the captain's quarters.
But most state flags typically have like it's a solid color, usually like a dark blue, or and then the state seal, right? There's a few others that are different, like Maryland's, Arizona's is different, Ohio's is a little bit different, North Carolina and Texas are a little different, California's is different, Washington's is different. It's green, and then in the middle it's got George Washington.
Yeah.
And you see this flag on his desk in his office or bunk, and it's important because the USS Alabama actually is stationed and then ships out of the naval station that is located in Washington State.
Makes sense.
So that's why there would be the Washington State
flag,
right? And it would make sense that that's the submarine that they would call to meet up with the Russians.
Yeah.
And the Pacific Ocean, if that's where they need to intercept it. So, I like that small touch. When I was kind of reading up on all of that, there's also a USS Alabama aircraft carrier. The USS Alabama.
Yeah, but you don't usually land planes on a sub, so it would make sense for there to be an aircraft carrier. And
aircraft carriers don't fully submerge.
At least they're not supposed to.
Anyway, so another little note about this scene when it submerges. So they never got a lot of full support from the Navy in making this movie. And so, but they were able to kind of go around. They were able to get a few shots, and they got an actual shot of a submarine submerging.
Awesome.
For the movie. And the sub that got submerged was the literal USS Alabama.
Even better.
So that scene's the actual, once they it cuts away from them because they obviously
Yeah.
they don't stand on top of the
No,
sub.
no, they don't stand on top of the sub while it's going underwater. They're not Indiana Jones.
Watch our Raiders of the Lost Ark episode. We forgot to mention that one in our list of submarine movies.
Yes, we did.
It's always the Germans. Germans and Russians. I mean, come on. One day I want to live in the world where you can have a submarine movie that does not involve Russians or Germans.
Yeah.
Maybe that was Down Periscope. I should go back and watch Down Periscope. Maybe that's that movie.
Maybe, but it probably does have either the Germans or Russians in it. So,
they could just do a movie, like a horror, or there's a ghost story on a submarine, right?
Yeah.
It's a historic submarine that's just docked somewhere, and it's about anyhow. Yeah, so they're down there in the water, and they're giving us like a count of days, by the way. So this is like late October that starts with, and they give us a date, and they kind of give you a general location of where the sub is, right? And we get occasional updates about kind of what's happening with the Russians and the Russian rebels and everything that's happening.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes back and forth between all that.
But basically we have just the day-to-day stuff going on the sub for the first few days that it shows, right?
Yeah, what I like about this is that it's it'd be easy to make the entire set kind of feel very claustrophobic. They don't really do that.
No, they don't.
And I like that aspect because, like, for the men on the boats, like, yeah, they're used to being on the submarine.
Yeah, they're used to not having a whole lot of room to move around.
And so, it's, they could have easily filmed in a way that makes the viewer kind of feel like tense, but I think they allow the acting to kind of get that across. And I mean, there's certain scenes where they do kind of amp that up a bit. But they did a good job of just kind of setting kind of a casual atmosphere within the sub, right?
Yeah.
There's a fish tank. There's just a kitchen where there's, again, some of the people that work in that submarine, they're not the people firing, missiles or getting communications.
I mean, sailors
or working in the control room. They need to eat. There's cooks.
Yeah.
My uncle was in the Marines in like Vietnam, and he was a cook.
Yeah, my brother-in-law was a cook on one of the supply ships in the Navy.
So, right, they want to eat. It's like, hey, Deep Blue Sea is not a military movie, but LL Cool J plays a cook.
Yep.
Because guess what? Scientists working on sharks to cure Alzheimer's, they want to eat too.
Yes.
And they're going to eat omelets from LL Cool J.
In Pearl Harbor, Cuba Gooding Jr. is a cook.
He is a cook, yes. So, yeah. So, it does a good job of kind of this, establishing a lot of the space within it. It's not just like the command deck or the radio room, right? Or, they go around there. And, you get the sense that, okay, yeah, it's a small space, but for them, it's just like it's normal. I like that aspect of the movie.
Yeah, and not long after they show the kitchen, they show that the galley. They show that there's a fire in the galley.
Yes,
a fire breaks out on the stove. Looks like a grease fire, and so everybody's rushing around trying to fight the fire. And Denzel. He's jogging through the sub, and alarms start going off, so he runs to help fight the fire. And he gets in there, hits the button to release CO2 and put the fire out.
Fire is bad to begin with.
But fire
in a very contained space.
Yeah, fire in a very contained space I mean,
underwater.
fire on a ship that's floating on top of the water is bad, but fire on a submarine that is hundreds of feet below the surface of the ocean.
There's no fire escape.
Yeah, it's a very bad thing.
There's no easy lifeboat to get to.
Yeah, so they get the fire out. And then as soon as the fire goes out, Ramsey calls a drill for a nuclear weapons drill. And so we get a nice little cameo here because, you know, Hunter puts the head cook Rono in charge of the cleanup and everything after the fire.
Yes.
And he's played by Mark Christopher Lawrence, who anybody who's seen Chuck would know as Big Mike.
Yes, Big Mike. He was also in Child's Play 3, by the way, just to throw it out there.
He was, but not as
He's
memorable
also
as
in
Chuck.
a Michael Bay movie, The Island. But
Yes, he was. But anyway,
did you know that he was also touched by an angel?
Doesn't surprise me. Was it Della Reese?
I don't know. He played Hank in the episode of Perfect Game.
Huh.
Yes.
Interesting.
Oh, and then he was also in an episode of Coach where he was Big Dave.
Big Dave.
He had a lot of TV credits.
Yeah.
Looking back at this, like, he was on My Name Is Earl. Back in the 1992. Oh, look, I mean, 92 is a big year. Designing Woman, Evening Shade, and Seinfeld.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so he gets put in charge, and
Hunter goes to
back to the deck, and
he goes back to the deck to.
And the whole command drill is basically receiving a communication, and then they had to authenticate it.
Yeah, and
What to do.
Hunter makes his feelings known right away that he
Doesn't think it's the appropriate time.
doesn't think it's the appropriate time to do the drill. Yeah, but so he goes along with it anyway, and he goes up and meets up with Ramsey and does his part on the drill. And then I thought this was interesting because when they go to authenticate the message, they open up the safe, and they've got the drill stuff right next to the real authenticator.
Yes, I thought that was
Why put them so close together? The only difference is one has a blue sign on it, the other has a red sign on it.
Well, that's the.
Why not have two different safes?
Yes. And it's interesting because, like, and Ramsey's, his defense about it's like, well, in real life situations, not going to give a shit about what's actually happening on this sub.
Yeah. So that's his,
and, like, it's
his reasoning for why he picked the time. Yeah, it is a solid point because
like, again, at the same time, like, in a moment of panic like that, you're not going to want to pick the wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, why put them together in the same safe?
Like, they could be like in the same area, but like they should be like right next to each other.
I get that, if it's one safe, you only have to remember one combination. But
yeah,
why not have some other way of, like, even if they're in the same safe, have another way of separating them so they're not right next to each other like that.
If anyone has ever served on a nuclear submarine, is this how it actually operates? Please tell us.
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah. If you're at liberty to tell us.
Or they just guessing. I don't know. But yeah, they get the, and how it is, like, there's a message, and then there's an authentication code, right? And then they have to match up the authentication code together, and then it actually goes through both process.
First they have to come up and they have to make sure it's formatted correctly,
right?
And then a second officer has to confirm that it's been formatted properly.
Right. Well, you have there's like 4 steps, right? You have the person that actually grabs the message. You got the next officer that confirms between the two that okay, but then you have to have Denzel has to confirm it, and finally Ramsey has to confirm it.
Yeah. And then they have to authenticate it. So they have to break open a little plastic thing, take the card out.
You know, and there's a code that's all like the NATO alphabet that they go through. You know, it's a series of like 8 letters. And then, you know, they say if it's good or not. So they go through that. They complete the drill. And sadly, there is someone that dies in the fire.
Yeah. So was it one of the cooks or just one of the other guys that came in to help fight?
It was one of the cooks.
Yeah, he dies of smoke inhalation.
Yeah. You know, it's sad and but you know, they kind of continue on. Once
they find out that, you know, one of the other guys is giving him CPR, then Ramsey aborts the drill. Yeah, so that he can go and help.
That's right. Yeah, they don't go through the entire drill for obvious reasons at that point. And they this is kind of your first kind of scene where you have kind of the I guess you get the tension and disagreements between the two of them.
Because when they're down there, after the guy dies, then Denzel voices his disagreement on the timing of the drill.
Right.
In front of everybody.
It's within all this that at some point we do see Steve Zahn for the first time, by the way. So anyhow. So they're going back and forth and like, you know, and he brings him into private. Like he goes into his.
So Ramsey takes Hunter into his quarters, into the captain's quarters.
His quarters. Yeah. And he does it privately.
And he explains to him, if you have a problem with any of my orders, talk to me in private. Don't do it in front of the men. We need to
keep the chain of command. And like your voice is without hesitation. And he talks about how like most of the men, you know, most of the men on here, they're just boys, right? They're not officers. They're not going to see that, you know, like they need to know that the chain of command is going to go all the way down, and they're going to have to follow whatever's said by by the next person up for them that's giving them an order, right? And then one of my favorite lines in this movie is like, you know, we're here to preserve democracy, not practice it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is like Gene Hackman this is Gene Hackman at the top of his game in this scene right here.
Yes, it is.
He's perfect. And I like it because he does it in a way that you understand what he's saying. You don't see him as a villain. You don't dislike him. Like, you know, throughout the movie, most of this, like, okay, you might agree or disagree with one or the other when it comes down to the central tension of the movie. But the movie never makes either one of them to be overly antagonistic or makes too much of a point to say like this one's wrong.
It's kind of like Captain America Civil War.
Yes.
You have your Captain America side and your Iron Man side. Neither of them is really touted as a villain or as an antagonist really to the other. They just have differing views.
Yes. And we get to the end of this movie and there's a perfect point about them not resolving the differences appropriately.
Yeah.
Which I get, like, I think a lot of people do kind of have a problem with this movie because, like, in terms of, like, the tensions that get to the point later would never, ever happen on a submarine.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's a movie. I don't care.
Movies are allowed to, you know, embellish a little bit.
So, but yeah, he goes on to say, like, I don't want to be disturbed for the next, I want to, you know, for the next 30 minutes. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
right. And so, Hunter leaves his quarters, and then we get a training man montage of Hunter, right?
Yeah.
Doing his push-ups, doing his jump ropes, and whatever.
Heavy bag.
Denzel getting buff, right?
Yeah.
So.
And then we are introduced to Danny Nucci.
Yes.
Who plays?
Who we said was in The Rock.
Danny Rivetti.
He was one of the Navy SEALs in The Rock, specifically the one that kind of stays down underneath the shower room in the tunnels, and then he goes up, and he's like the last one of the SEALs to die in The Rock. As we talked about in The Rock, he was probably most famously known for being Fabrizio in Titanic. Also, in The Eraser.
Yep. Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I mentioned Alive. And then we get into 2000s, and he's a lot fewer movies. Though he was in World Trade Center, the Oliver Stone movie. And there was a direct-to-DVD movie of The Sandlot 3, in which he plays an adult Benny Rodriguez.
Huh.
You should watch our Sandlot episode.
Yes.
I have no intention of doing the Sandlot 3.
Our Sandlot episode, which was our tribute episode to the late James
Earl Jones. Yes. Yeah, he hasn't, he still does some TV work, it looks like. He hasn't made a movie in a while. But he still does some TV work, Danny Nucci. Yeah, we were talking about this pre-show. Like, he's comes up surprisingly a lot in the 90s.
Yep.
Which, at the time, I don't think I would have connected that. So.
But anyway, so Danny Nucci, Danny Rivetti, it's revealed that he got into a little scuffle with one of the other sailors. Yeah,
that's like they're like in the mess hall eating, and there's a scuffle, and
they were arguing over a Silver Surfer. Over whose Silver Surfer was better. The Kirby Silver Surfer or the Morbius Silver Surfer.
This is really appropriate considering Fantastic Four is coming out later this year.
Yep.
Sorry. But anyway, Hunter sees that and he has to pull Nucci aside. And he's like, you can't do this. Right?
Like, you're an officer. You're an officer. Or you're a supervisor.
Like, he's like,
tells me you're a supervisor.
You want to be an officer.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to have to write you up.
Yeah, if this happens again, I'm going to write you up.
Again.
And
then it's like, and besides, everybody knows the Kirby Silver Surfer
is the only Silver Surfer. Yeah. It's the only real Silver Surfer.
So, this is one of Quentin Tarantino's contributions to the script.
I can totally see that. Tarantino is a big comic book fan, so I can absolutely understand that.
Yes, because it's funny. Like, it kind of comes out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you get like these pop culture references to Silver Surfer,
and there's a few more later. There's some Silver Surfer references later, and then also there's some Star Trek references.
All Tarantino. And like, okay, Star Trek. All right, most people know Star Trek, but like Silver Surfer, like again, this was like the 10th highest grossing movie of like 1995. Silver Surfer is not like A-list. Like, he's not like Spider-Man or Batman or Superman or the Flash that like everyone's gonna know.
Your average person didn't really know much about Silver Surfer in 1995.
But a debate about the Silver Surfer in 1995 in the movie, like that, especially a submarine movie, you're not expecting that.
No.
But if Tarantino's involved, then you might expect it. So we cut now, and there's we have what, Ramsey and his dog. The dog's peeing.
Yeah, dog's peeing.
And
at this point, I believe it is day 11, right? Something like that.
Sounds about right. And he's the two of them are talking, and Hunter just tells him, like, the morale's low. Like, you got to figure something out here, right? And it makes sense. Like, they've been stuck underwater for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And this is where, like, you finally kind of see Hunter then start to see a different side that definitely doesn't agree with Ramsey.
Yeah, because he suggested, because Ramsey, he said these men, it's something along the lines of these men need a kick in the ass or something like that. And Ramsey and Hunter's like, or a pat on the back.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that's when he's like, Sarah, the morale's low. We got to do something to raise morale. And that's when Ramsey gets on the PA system.
Yep. He's talking to the entire sub. And he's like, yeah, it's been brought to my attention. So blah, 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 blah. It's like,
that morale is low. So basically, suck it up. You get to work.
If you can't do that, then you're more than happy to leave now if you want to.
Yeah.
And that's that. So they finally kind of cut, and they, you got someone that's manning like the sonar, and then sees that there's a potential. Is it well, who's isn't it is it Rivetti? That is, yeah, he's the sonar supervisor.
Yeah.
It's Rivetti.
Yeah, Rivetti's the sonar
Rivetti
supervisor
again now. Yeah. And he sees, like, all of a sudden he sees another possible, like, roaming sub.
He
like
sees something on the radar.
It on the radar, right? And so he alerts this to everybody, right? And so they're getting on the deck and they're looking at it, and they finally realize it's an Akula class submarine, which is a Russian
hunter killer.
Yes. Right. And so they got, they're all of a sudden, like, they have to kind of figure out, well, what's, like, our what we can do here. Then they get a transmission, right? And
yep,
they read it, they authenticate it, and then they have orders to potentially, fire if necessary to blow it out of the water. All right, so yeah, so they have the orders. They're getting proceed to launch, right?
Well, the message they get is to fire a nuke at Russia.
Right, at Russia, yes.
Yeah, so not at the sub.
Not at the sub, that's right. The fire at Russia, right? At the Russian base.
And so everything that they were doing the drill on earlier actually comes out. Like, that's the exact call that they were doing the drill for.
Exactly. But then they detect the sub, and they get this and they get a second transmission before when does the second transmission come in?
The second transmission comes in, so they are trying to evade the hunter killer.
That's the thing. Like, they had to do both, because, like, they're trying to obey orders, and then they also have to,
So they're diving deeper to
sub.
evade the hunter killer, and they're getting below. So the message starts coming in as they're diving, and they get out of range of the outer radio range, and so it cuts off the message.
Yes.
And so basically all that it says in the message is nuclear launch, and then everything else is gone.
Right. And so they have to piece together, okay, well, this is a new message. What do we do?
So then we get another great line coming up here soon, but they're trying to figure out what to do, and they're too low underwater to be able to get the message out, to be able to get the rest of the message. So, and if they went back up toward the surface, then the other sub would see them.
Right. And the tricky part they have here too is that we see again, it's a Kula class sub. It's Russian, but you have Russians like in Civil War right now. So is it friendly Russian or is it unfriendly Russian?
Yeah. So they Ramsey wants to keep things going as planned, follow the original message, and Hunter is insistent that they figure out what the rest of this message was, this second message.
Right. And meanwhile, like the at some point here, the Akula kind of disappears off the sonar.
Yeah.
Right. And so then they're trying to oh, what are we going to do about this? Well, no, we shouldn't do, it's like Ramsey wants to kind of go by what the last full transmission says.
Yeah. And Hunter wants to hold off on that and see if they can find out what this new transmission says.
Right. Because
so
we're risking nuclear war.
Yeah. Not just nuclear war, but nuclear holocaust.
Yes. If we're doing the wrong thing here.
Yeah. So he realizes that they have plenty of cable for their radio buoy.
Yes.
So he, asks Ramsey for permission to send the buoy up, and Ramsey gives it, and, reluctantly. And this is when we get another one of those great lines. We just have Denzel Washington saying, "Float the buoy."
Float the buoy.
Float the buoy.
Only the way Denzel can just deliver certain lines that seem just kind of, pedestrian.
Yeah.
But he brings his Denzel way of doing it.
So they send the buoy up, and, the cable's extending, and then something goes wrong with the winch.
And so here's the thing, right? I think most people are aware of how submarines detect things and with sonar underwater, because again, it's underwater.
Yep.
But if something goes wrong with the winch, it's going to make some noise.
Yeah. So because they had when they started diving, they put the sub into ultra quiet mode.
Yes.
And so when the winch starts seizing up, it starts making noise. And so they stop it as soon as they can. But not before the hunter killer,
because
catches wind of it.
It's got sonar too,
and appears on the radar again.
Oh, poopies!
And it fires a couple torpedoes.
Yep.
So they're trying to evade. They're doing evasive maneuvers. They send out their countermeasures, and the torpedoes go after the countermeasures, and they blow up nearby, causing a nice shakeup in the.
But it disrupts their communications more.
But yes, it severs the cable for the buoy.
Yeah,
the communications antenna, and so their communications are out.
So now it's even harder to get the rest of that message.
Yeah.
But this is when we get the start of the full tension of what's going to happen, right?
Yeah. So Ramsey insists that they keep on going with the original message. They keep preparing to launch. And Hunter is still insistent that they try to find a way to get the rest of the message, the rest of the second message. Because it might say that, they should abort the launch. And
because again, they're on a submarine. They have no idea what's going on with that war. They can only rely on the communication they're getting from, their command.
Yeah.
Right. And they have their own, planes that are trying to, figure out, what's going on with them as well. As best that they can do with their own radar. But yeah, they're basically, it's all in dark. So, right? He says that this is how he looks at it, like, they have satellites looking down on us to see if our birds are afloat. And if they're not, they give orders to somebody else to continue on with our mission, right? If they know that we can't follow through on sending out our own nukes off, there is a backup plan. Is one of his arguments about it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
It's called
we're not
redundancy.
the only people out here. Redundancy, yes. Happens, the military uses it. It's it's there for a reason.
He's like, so my job as XO is to understand that there's another sub out there that if we don't complete our mission, they will. They'll follow the orders. And then Ramsey's retort to that is, as captain of the ship, I have to assume that there is no one else out there, that we are the only hope.
Right. Which he's got a point. Like, we don't know they're actually out there. They could have been shot down by that hunter killer. They might have been blown out of the water earlier. We don't know. We're playing blind here. Now, no, again, this is 1995. I'm sure there's the Navy and the military have built in a lot more safeguards in such instances. Anyway.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, I mean, they're going toe to toe. I mean, both of them just are first class acting here.
Yes. Yeah, they're going toe to toe.
Just like, I don't have the luxury of presumptions, right? Yeah, we have rules that are not open to interpretation. Personal intuition, gut feelings, hairs in the back of your neck, devils, angels sitting on your soldier, right? Now he said, like, these orders are coming down from the commander in chief, and so I'm going to follow through with them. Like, I've made a decision. I'm the captain of this boat. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Only he yells that part. He yells, "Shut the fuck up," and gets everybody's attention. Because at this point, like up until that point, they're kind of arguing quietly with each other.
Yeah, no,
it's kind of a whisper. Yeah, it starts out as kind of a whisper disagreement, and then just crescendos up into a full blown argument.
By the way, kudos to Gene Hackman here. I've seen a bunch of Gene Hackman movies. Gene Hackman can just drop the F-bomb with the best of them.
Yes, he can. Right up there with Sam Jackson.
He does it with a plum. It's natural. And it's like, it fits. And he does it how he would think a naval commander captain would just do it in such a situation.
Yeah.
And again, what I like about this, like, there's no malice behind it.
No.
He's frustrated with the situation.
Yeah.
He doesn't like that his authority's been questioned. He doesn't like that aspect of it.
And especially that his authority's been questioned in front of the crew.
Yeah. Exactly.
After he already had a conversation with Hunter about that exact thing. If you have an issue with my orders, tell me in private.
It's not personal, but he's frustrated because, like, he sees this as the best option given his expertise and his own kind of view and philosophy.
Yeah.
Right? And Denzel or is doing the same damn thing.
Yeah. He's going by what he was trained on in the Navy. You know what the Navy book says.
And so you're enjoying both of them, and like, okay, yeah, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Huh? That makes sense. And like, oh, it's Denzel and Gene Hackman, and they're both completely lost into their roles now, and you buy it completely.
Yeah,
like this is why you're watching this movie. Is like for scenes like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and it's funny at this point. We're about like a little over halfway through.
Yeah, about halfway through it, yeah.
And you know what? We've had a few missiles launched, right? Underwater missiles. But this is the big action in the movie right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's two of them going toe to toe.
It's like, the torpedoes, exploding right next to the sub. You'd think that would be, the big action set piece. But no, it's an argument between Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman.
and like it's worth the price of admission.
Oh,
like, I mean, it's so like what, 1995. It's probably what, the $7 night movie, $3-4 matinee, something like that. Now it's like $10.50 for a standard ticket and whatever it is for the matinee. I have no idea. Haven't seen a night movie in a long time. So when I go to the movies now, it's in the afternoon. Right. So, but yeah, so, they get through, and finally, like, he is, they're going to the point where they have to kind of concur about what to do. Right. And which involves both, Hunter and Ramsey, have to agree upon what they're doing.
And so Ramsey gives the order and Hunter won't concur. And so, the crew can't proceed with the launch sequence until they get, until the XO concurs with the captain. And that's not happening. So essentially, they argue more, and then Hunter basically commits mutiny.
Yeah. Well, part of it is like, even before that, like Ramsey tries to have Hunter taken off the deck.
Yeah.
Right.
So he orders Cobb. He orders Cobb
which is Cobb, played by George Zunza. Right. And the chief of the boat is like your highest. He's not an officer. He's like the highest ranking enlisted.
Yeah.
Man,
and he
ship.
Was in this whole movie. He's been like right there with Ramsey on every call.
Oh yeah.
Everything. And
absolutely.
So he tries to get Cobb to take Hunter away,
and it makes sense.
Arrest Hunter.
He's obviously been working with Ramsey for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. Like he's again, like this is like the 90s, so like he knows how long he's been the chief of the boat here, but not like a lot in wartime, but like he respects him. Obviously.
Yeah. And so, when he's given this order, Cobb refuses. He refuses to take Hunter away. And so that's when then Hunter turns it around and gets them to escort Ramsey to his quarters and lock him up in there. And then, so after they take Ramsey away, then, Hunter thanks Cobb. And Cobb tells him, I didn't do it for you. I did it because it's by the book.
Right.
I did it because that's the rules of the Navy.
Yeah. And he's like, that's the thing. He's like, he goes to Cobb. He's like, oh, thank you. He's like, thank you. Fuck you.
Yeah.
It's like, again, it's like, he respects Ramsey, but he's also going to go by the rules.
Yeah. And in his eyes, Hunter was in the right.
Yep.
Because Hunter was going by what the Navy procedures are.
Because they can't launch without both of them concurring. Right? And he's like, it's like, he asked Cobb to, escort the captain to his stateroom. I'm assuming command. Right? And he goes back. It's like, it's like, no, like by the rules, this is what's supposed to happen. Right? But he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Right? But so after all that happens, like, it's like he tells the crew, he gets on. I relieve, because everyone's on deck there, right? There's people in the other parts of the ship. I relieved Captain Ramsey of his duties for acting in contravention of the rules and regulations regarding nuclear weapons release. And I'm going to delay this launch. We're going to maintain our state. We're going to be ready in case another, pending confirmation of this emergency message. Yeah. And, well aware that there's also a cool submarine out there.
Yeah. Who's looking for us.
That still wants to maybe potentially blow them out of the water. And like he's like, we'll take action on them if they fire at us. Yeah. I've got no qualms about blowing them.
Yeah. Blowing them out of the water. And what we didn't mention yet is there's a whole time limit on all this, because
yes, no, this is actually, I'm glad he brought this up.
When they started the launch sequence, they had 14 minutes before launch.
Yes.
And Russia, at that same time, like right around that same time, was estimated to have 60 minutes before they could launch their nukes.
I'm glad he brought this up because I don't think I realized it fully until later. Like, I think the last part of this movie pretty much takes place in real time.
Yeah.
Maybe not exactly, but pretty close.
Pretty close, yeah.
So, because you have a scene where you have... So, we mentioned earlier, we haven't brought him up in a while, but Viggo Mortensen plays Lieutenant Peter Ince, whose nickname is Weps, because he's the weapons officer.
Yeah.
So he sets a clock for 60 minutes. And you see them look back at this occasionally throughout the last half of this movie.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I'm glad he brought that up. Yeah. So you're kind of dealing with two different timelines here about what's going to happen.
Yeah. So if they delay the launch, then sure, they can stop the launch sequence so it doesn't launch in 14 minutes, but they have a maximum of 60 minutes before Russia potentially launches their nukes.
Yes.
So
right, and they bring it up like it's like they could either just kind of launch them going across like the Pacific, or they could take them over the Arctic and hit us more in the middle of the country, right? So, yeah. So looking at everything, it's like So now that Hunter is in command, right? He's in the communications room. He's like, it's like, well, you gotta look at this. He's talking with one of the radio guys. It's like, yeah, well, the whole system's like crashed. Like what are we gonna do? And he asks this guy. His name is Vossler.
Yeah, Russell Vossler.
So he's kind of it's the first time we kind of get him and Vossler. I brought him up. Lilo Brancato Jr. plays Vossler. He's a petty officer, right? He was in the Bronx Tale, which is a De Niro directed movie. His director debut. Also was in an episode of The Sopranos, or in a it might have been a few.
With James
Gandolfini,
who is probably with James Gandolfini, Bobby Doherty, Lieutenant Bobby Doherty, who is probably Ramsey's biggest supporter in this movie.
Yes, and he's not happy that Ramsey's been put to his quarters, right? So they put they put a couple of officers standing at his quarters, right? To make sure no one kind of gets in, that he gets out. And, Ramsey, again, to Ramsey's credit, like he doesn't resist when they walk him down to his quarters, right? He goes in and he gets Hunter's file. He wants to read more about Hunter.
Yes.
Right?
And so he gets Hunter's file because he's got it in his quarters. And he's reading through it. And then while all this stuff's going on with Hunter, he's taking control of the ship and, he's trying to get the radio fixed and trying to, all this, trying to get the rest of that message. And so then we have Doherty, James Gandolfini, who goes down and forces so they put two guards at the gate at the door to Ramsey's quarters, and he goes down, orders one of them to move. He won't, so he pulls a gun on the other one, orders him to move, and he moves out of the way. So he goes into Ramsey's quarters, and Ramsey has the file, has Hunter's file, and so he's telling him to go get a few of the guys and get Zimmer, and you need Weps. Weps is the key.
He said, well, yeah.
But
it's kind of like earlier in the movie, they kind of established like Weps and Hunter are friends.
Yeah.
Like you can get Weps on board that, then the rest can fall in place.
But one of the other things that he tells Doherty is that he was reading through Hunter's file, and the most combat he's seen was in a meeting about combat. And so here's my question there, though.
Okay.
So at the beginning of the movie, Hunter came highly recommended Did Ramsey not read his file before putting him on a ship?
Good question. I think it's a really good question. Again, he said it was a short list.
Because you would think that someone with the reputation of Ramsey would actually read the file of his potential XO before inviting him onto his submarine.
I would think, again, like the Navy these days, a lot of our Navy, the people that see a lot of the action are probably more the pilots, right? Or I don't know, but yeah, I get what you're saying, and yeah, it's a good question. Again, who was on the list? I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway,
so they're already kind of planning that he's Gandolfini's and Ramsey are trying to kind of plan to take back eventually, but they're waiting their time, right? Finally, we know that the Kula is coming back, right?
Yeah,
so this is where we kind of
gets back on the radar.
Kind of actual like submarine action is now.
Yeah, and at this point, so Denzel has gotten them to start rising up and going to a radio depth.
Yes.
Go up into the range of so they could have a better chance of getting that message.
I mean, here's the thing: is like he has there's two issues, right? Because like he is taking serious the first message.
Yes.
Because like if that is the actual order, that's still the order. He will follow through with that order.
Yes, but they have the second message.
He wants the confirmation on that second order.
He wants to make sure that second message isn't, something saying, don't launch.
Right.
Because if that message says don't launch and they still follow the first message and launch, then they're in a whole lot of trouble.
Shit. And again, like it's not an actual time of war for them yet.
Yeah.
They're bracing for the potential of it. And then they do have the literal, like, actual, like, immediate danger of this Akula. Like, okay, well, it's coming back to us now we made this noise. Like, it's, a good chance, like, this is one of the rebel Russians that, because they say, like, he's got 4 of these subs, these Akulas. Yeah. He has control of 4 of them. And like obviously they will have no qualms about blowing them out of that water.
So the Akula catches up to them again, but this time it's much closer than it was before. They don't see it until it's like right on them.
It's right on them,
and so it fires a couple of torpedoes at them, but it's too close for them to be able to arm because the torpedoes need 1,000 feet in order to arm.
Yes,
and they're within that, and so they're able to evade it, and torpedoes miss them. And so they turn around and they fire at the Akula, and they're able to blow it up. They hit it.
I love it. I love that shot.
Yeah,
blowing it up.
Me too.
This is a classic underwater like implosion.
Yeah,
it's like we see the water blow out, and Anyway, but there's a problem.
The Akula was able to get one shot off right before it blew up, and so there's a torpedo flying at the sub, and they, if they fire the countermeasures, and it hits the countermeasures, but it hits too close. It hits much closer than the last ones did.
Yeah, and so like the shock of it damages the hull of like the sub.
Yeah, and it knocks out the engines.
So it's it's not a direct like hit, but the shock of it's still enough to actually damage it.
Yeah, and it knocks out the propulsion, and there's a section of the sub that's flooding, and that's where Steve Zahn is. Steve Zahn and 2 other sailors are down there, and
so this is what doesn't make sense. There's another guy that's outside the door that will shut off that thing so that the sub does not flood itself.
Basically, he's by the hatch to seal off that section.
And so there's like 4 of them. There's 3 that are inside, one's just outside. And George Zunza is like just talking about like how fast they're sinking. Like we get to like 1800.
If we get to
it's gonna be
if we get to 1880, then the pressure is going to be too much for the hull to take, and the sub is going to be crushed.
And they're not doing anything. Like they're trying to like people are inside. They're trying to do what they can to stave off like the water coming in, and stop the leak and everything.
Yeah.
And the other guy's yelling at them. It's like, I'm sorry. There's time for them just to get out.
Yeah.
And then seal off that section of the sub.
Yeah.
But instead, Steve's on because he's Steve's on. Like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, he's got a giant wrench. And, he's up there trying to stop this. And he does stop a little bit of it. He's able to seal off a little bit of the leak. But
I mean, the pipe blows back and he gets hit in the head.
Yeah.
And
yeah. But yeah, so Hunter is calling down to this guy that's by the hatch and telling him to seal it off. He's like, no, there's bagals down there.
He was dead. What's he doing? How did he resurrect? No more table.
No more table. What are you doing, cop?
Watch our Die Hard episode with the Yorks. Not watch. Listen. We can watch it on YouTube. There's no video, but you could listen to it.
You can look at our logo while you're listening to
it. But please listen to our Die Hard episode with the Yorks.
It was a great episode. Anyway, back to Crimson Tide. So Steve Zahn is turning a wrench, and the piece of the pipe blows out at him, hits him in the face. And the other guys, dive underwater to grab him and try to get him out, but it's too late.
Yep. And instead, they just look at him as he
dies. The whole
dies
section fills with water, and the guy up top is forced to shut the hatch and seal it off. So
the three of them sadly perish. Which is interesting because later in the movie, after everything's resolved, there's not much said about these three.
No,
these three men.
No, there's not. There's not.
Sadly. I mean, they're sadly gave their lives and for the country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it's a movie, but still they were heroic. Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, they seal it off, and
they're still sinking
again.
They still can't get the propulsion working right, and
right.
They're sinking. They're getting closer and closer to that 1880 depth.
But they get enough like repressurized because they've sealed it off. They're not going to go down any further, and they can operate more properly again.
Yeah,
right.
So they get down to like like 1865 or so.
Yeah, it gets close. It gets
close. You hear the creaking of the hull.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and you see their faces.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then they're able to get propulsion going again, and the propeller starts up, and they level out, and they start rising up again.
Yeah, and they can drain out that section at that point once they get once things have they pressurized and they got the propulsion, they can drain that out, and they get back up. So now it's the perfect time for the counter mutiny.
Yeah.
Because you have Lieutenant Bobby Doherty. He's a supply officer. I don't think we really talked about that before. The supply officer. And he gets the rest. He gets a couple of the guys you talked about earlier.
Yeah, he gets Zimmer. He gets
Craven,
Westergaard.
Zimmer. He gets Westergaard. They get men that are there, and then they get down to Wepps. And Wepps does not want to do this first because
no, he doesn't.
He's friends, and
He's friends with Denzel, and
again, he's friends with Denzel, but he also like he realizes like, yeah, no, he's right. Like
he's
I
yeah,
may not have agreed with the decision that he did, but like no, like Ramsey, like was trying to countervene,
mm-hmm.
the second in command, and the second in command and the the captain have to be on the same page to launch these missiles.
Yeah, but they convince him to go along with them, and so he's getting things ready to launch as Ramsey goes and takes command again.
Yep. And so the idea is then to go ahead and put, Hunter in his quarters.
No, they're going to put Hunter in the mess hall.
The mess hall. That's right. The mess quarters, right?
And so they do that. They put Hunter in the mess hall. And then while Ramsey is up there getting everything ready to launch again, then Hunter and Cobb also get sent down there. Because he was siding with Hunter.
Cobb is still like, again, he's even at this point when they get to the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Like he could easily just at that point, because like he's a lower guy than Ramsey, but
he realizes
in terms of the low of the law, Hunter is still correct about this chain of command, because like they need to be on the same page, and not on the same page. Ramsey countervened that. So Ramsey's technically in the wrong on that end.
Yeah.
Even if you might agree with Ramsey's decision that we probably should just launch the nuke, he's not going with protocol.
Yeah. So Hunter had realized what Ramsey was potentially going to be doing here. So he had Cobb grab a gun, and had a couple of the other guys grab guns and to prepare for what's coming.
Yes.
But they weren't able to really do anything with it because Ramsey's guys got to them first.
You're right.
So, but Ramsey sees Cobb with the gun, and he's disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
He's disappointed that his chief
I get it.
is siding with Hunter. So they both get thrown into the mess hall with guards down there. And
by the way, to bring it back just briefly back to the scene where they go to Weps, I love Viggo Mortensen in that scene.
Yeah.
He's so conflicted. You see it.
Oh, yeah. And you see it. Yes.
Viggo Mortensen is a terrific actor.
Yes, he is.
And again, this is like before he's like that famous, but like even in this scene where he's kind of playing it's funny, like, he's early in the movie, but then like after, like once they go underwater, like he's kind of he's very much in the background.
Yeah.
But he has this scene here, and he's really, really, really good in this scene.
He's excellent in this scene. You see it in his eyes, you see it in his face. Just
it's like he's like, why did they have to do this? Because like I don't agree with what my friend did. Like I think that the captain was in the right on this, but my friend is actually in the right of what he's saying. But I'm afraid of what happens if we're wrong about this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a complicated situation, and he sells it really, really well.
Yes, he does.
And like this a great early demonstration of how great an actor Viggo Mortensen is.
Yeah. I mean, it may be this movie that got him the part of Aragorn.
Hey, yeah. I mean, Aragorn's so conflicted. I can't wait to do Lord of the Rings. We got to figure out what we're doing Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, we're definitely doing Lord of the Rings. But yeah, we just got to figure out when. But yeah, maybe this movie and Daylight could be the reasons why he got the Aragorn part. Daylight with Sylvester Stallone.
Right. But anyway, he realizes it soon, like this might happen. Everything has been like, even before like he gets put down there, he makes sure he goes into the radio room and he talks to this guy Vossler, right? And Vossler is played by
Lilo Braccato.
Yes, let me talk about that. Yeah, that's right. about to get it back up. We talked about it already. Restore it. He's trying hard, and they finally get the deck, and he's not sure at first, but then Webs comes in. I love Denzel in this scene because he looks at him and he's like, "It's like et tu, brute?" Right? I mean, like you look at James Gandolfini. James Gandolfini looks like he's ready to just like kill somebody.
Yeah.
He's just.
Oh, but what we missed before was before Ramsey came back out, when Hunter was talking to Vossler. Then he's like, "You ever seen Star Trek?" Like, remember when?
Yes.
Captain Kirk needed Scotty to fix something, and he's like, "So I'm Kirk, you're Scotty. I need this fixed now." So, anyway, so they're in the mess hall, and they're able to overpower the guards.
Yes. Okay, so I love how like the guy that kind of convinces it's like, "Oh yeah, I never liked this guy in the first place." Right? He's got he's a smaller guy that doesn't like this bigger guy, and then they tie the bigger guy to a chair in the mess hall.
Yeah.
Right? And he's kind of an asshole too. He's kind of like the James Gandolfini character. He's an asshole. Mm-hmm. We'll get back to him a little bit later, but I love how later in the movie he's still just kind of tied up. It seems like we never find out what happened. Yeah. Like, everyone else makes nice, but does he make nice? I don't know.
I doubt it.
Because like he looks like he's taking pleasure in like being part of like terrorizing some of the other people that are with Hunter.
Yeah, and so they're.
So anyway,
what is it? So what was it that they overpowered the guards, or was it that? Yeah, because Rivetti was being escorted by one of them.
Yes.
Or no, they were standing guard outside of the mess hall, and Rivetti was walking by them, and they stopped him. He's like, "I gotta go to the bathroom." Like, you need an escort. Yes. I need an escort to take a shit.
That's right. That's right. Because when Ramsey took back control, he said everyone had to do things in twos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so he's
by himself.
Yeah, so he's by himself. So he's like, I need an escort to take a shit. But the guard that's outside the mess hall won't let him out and won't let him pass. And so Rivetti, acts like he's going to go along with him, and then, turns on him, grabs the shotgun that the guy's got, breaks his nose, and then it turns out that this guy is the one he was arguing with before about Silver Surfer. So so he gets him to let him into the mess hall. And so Rivetti gets Denzel and Cobb out.
Right. And at this point, like earlier in the movie, like.
So Hunter tells him to go get 4 jumpsuits and 4 hats so that they can sort of disguise themselves while they're going through the ship to
Hunter had given
get up to command.
Rivetti he gave the keys earlier? Who did Hunter get the keys to the ship earlier? Was it Rivetti
He gave Rivetti the keys.
But they got the keys back, right? Because then, like, you need the keys to help, to be as one of the aspects of
because Rivetti
shooting off.
Yeah, so after Rivetti got the shotgun out of the guy's hands and pinned him up against the wall, he pulled the keys out of his pocket to get him to unlock the door. The keys that Hunter had given him earlier.
So
I love it when Hunter gives them to him. He's like, "These are the keys to the whole sub."
Ah, yes.
The keys to the whole sub.
So meanwhile, so got Ramsey. He's back on deck, but Hunter's first option is to go back to Wepps because Wepps is the weapons officer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the one that's ultimately going to be the one firing these things.
Yeah.
You have the captain and the second command is supposed to be Hunter. Agree upon it. And they give the order to the weapons officer, which is Wepps.
Yeah. So
to actually launch it.
What Hunter is doing is he's trying to get to the command center so that he can shut off the launch trigger. Basically, he can remove the captain's key, and then the nuclear missile won't launch.
Right.
And but he calls Wepps on the phone, and he's trying to get him to not, don't open that safe. Yeah. You're the only one that has the combination. Do not use it. And so then you get another glimpse of Wepps being torn.
Yeah. Again,
you see that conflict.
Viggo Mortensen does it well. And it's enough that he halts, and Ramsey's trying to give the order for him to launch the nukes.
Yeah. So when Wepps doesn't answer, Ramsey decides that he's going to go down and tell him to do it in person. So
which is when Hunter takes the opportunity to go up on deck.
Exactly, which is when Hunter takes the opportunity to go up on deck, and Ramsey gets down to Wepps. He won't open the safe, so he puts a gun to his head, tells him to open the safe. He realizes,
oh no, Wepps is again. There's only one person that knows that combination. Yeah. That's the weapons officer.
Tells him he's going to count to 3. Then he'll blow his brains out. And so he gets to 2. He's at 1, 2, and then he's like, "Oh, there's no point in shooting you. You're the only one that knows the combination." But this guy, he just grabs a random, guy next to him.
It's played by Scott Grimes.
Yes. I was going to say that too.
We have not mentioned him yet in all of this.
We have not.
Scott Grimes had a small role in this movie.
Yes, Scott Grimes is in this movie. From recent things like The Orville and the Ted TV show.
The Ted, yes.
And Oppenheimer.
Obviously, American Dad and all these other things. I mean, No, Scott, he was in ER before even American Dad.
Yeah.
I mean, not a huge name, but he's been in a lot of stuff.
He's a good actor, though. He's a very underrated actor.
I agree. But he's in this, and he's in the pivotal part of this movie.
So Ramsey grabs Scott Grimes and puts a gun to his head, and he tells Wepps that he's going to shoot him if he doesn't open the safe.
Wepps, because you know what?
So he starts counting.
Don't want to risk this.
Yeah, so he says 1,
this dude's innocent.
2.
He does not deserve this.
Then Wepps just says, "Sir," and Ramsey takes the gun out of Scott Grimes' face. And Wepps opens up the safe, and then Ramsey pulls the trigger out of the safe. And when he goes to pull the trigger to launch the missile, or launch the missiles, because there's multiple missiles they're going to launch.
There's never just one. There's always multiple.
Because 1 through 5 and 20 through 24.
Yes.
So a total of 10 missiles they're launching.
That's a lot of nuclear warheads.
Yes. So he pulls the trigger and nothing happens. Because Denzel had just pulled out the key just in time.
Because, again, you had to have a key in from the captain. Because the captain and the next in command agree. They put the key in. That key then, but the key can't do anything without the trigger. So obviously Ramsey knows, Hunter's back on deck.
Mm-hmm. So he goes back up there, and they're arguing a little bit more. And then the radio is almost fixed.
And that's the thing. I like this part too. Between all of this, between the deck, what's going on there, the weapons quarter, they're trying to restore communication. Yeah, with the radio.
Yes, he keeps on cutting to Vossler working on the radio, trying to fix it, and
he occasionally gets something. "Oh, did you see that?" He's talking to this other guy's "Oh, you see that?" No, we're almost there. It's he's taking this job seriously. Yeah, Vossler, you know what? No, this is important. I got to do this again. He's a petty officer. He's doing what he can. And I'm going to do what I'm being told to do. I'm taking pride in this. I'm going to do what I can do to help everybody.
Yeah. So it comes down to 6 minutes before the Russians can launch.
And then you get Ramsey, he gets up, and now you have Hunter's men. I wouldn't even hesitate to say men. You get those that are on, I mean, even like sides. You got the Ramsey and Hunter, and you got all of them, and they're all together, right?
Yeah, and Vossler calls on the radio, says that radio's working. He was able to fix communications.
And it's and like they get all up there. It's almost like a Mexican standoff at first.
Yeah.
And then that's when Vossler calls, like he's got it restored.
So Ramsey tells him, you got 3 minutes.
He says, I got 3 minutes because it's just 6 minutes left. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you half of that time.
Yeah.
3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes. And so then he tells Hunter, you got 3 minutes. And so Ramsey sits down, and then Hunter sits down across from him, and they start talking about horses again.
For this communication to come back through. And they're talking about horses again. Horses. Horses. It gets back to something that's as simple as a horse. Yeah. I love it. Like, this is the part, like, you can complain a lot about how some of this is far-fetched, but I love that it goes back to the horses. Yeah. Like, it's just, there's certain things with this script when you come to this.
And Ramsey starts that, too. He's like, speaking of horses, even though it's been a week and a half since they talked about horses. Yeah. He's like, speaking of horses, did you know this one
hour and a half since they talked about horses?
Yeah. And he's like, speaking of horses, this one type of horse, they're all white. All of them are white and from Portugal. And Hunter is like, well, actually, yes, I do know this. I do know this horse. And did you know that they're not
Lipizzaner stallions?
Lipizzaner stallions, yeah. That they're all white. The Lipizzaner stallions from Portugal, they're all white. And Hunter's like, yes, I know about those. And did you know that they're not born white? They're born black. And then, as they get older, they turn white. And that they're actually from Spain, not from Portugal. Ramsey's like, oh, that's real interesting. I didn't know that they were born black and then became white as they got older. But they are from Portugal, not from Spain.
Right, yeah. So what's interesting about these horses, I kind of looked this up. So apparently they're actually part of the Spanish riding school in Vienna.
Okay.
And they're often referred to as the dancing horses. But yeah, they are not born white. Not all of them are black, apparently. Some are actually more of a chestnut color.
Okay.
When they're born. But yeah, they're white generally. But yeah, they're kind of referred to as a dancing horse. And you could easily just, if anyone wanted to Google them, you can just do Lipizzaner, which is Lipizzaner.
Yeah. So, but real quick, we missed one part when they were, before the radio's fixed and everything, when they're arguing about the Russians are going to be launching and they're mobilizing their planes and all that. And Zimmer just blurts out, you don't put on a condom unless you're going to fuck.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. I'm glad he brought this up because, like, Gandolfini, he gets 2 or 3 scenes in this movie where it's like, it's James Gandolfini. And that's one of them.
Except it was Zimmer that said it, wasn't it?
That's right. No, it was Zimmer. That's right. Yes.
Matt Craven.
It was Matt Craven. That's right. Sorry. Thank you. It was Matt Craven. He's not very likable either.
No, he's not. Which usually he plays a likable character in most movies that he's in.
And when you look at him, he looks like he's a likable person.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, like, I don't know if he's that likable
in this movie.
And it's funny because, like, all the other guys that he gets introduced to, like Westergaard and Linklater, right? Overall, they're fairly likable. Yeah, they're still with Ramsey. But yeah, Bobby and Zimmer, both of them, not that likable people.
No. But yeah, so they're waiting, and about the time that they're done with their horse conversation.
And they're just sitting there staring, and then
that's when
finally the message comes through.
The light comes on, the message comes through,
and they go through the drill again.
They go through the authentication, and like nothing's happened. Yeah, the same people who did it before.
Yep,
they go through it.
Protocol that they did earlier.
And it turns out the message said to terminate the launch.
Yep, that they've quelled the rebellion of the Russian dissidents. What? Yeah, I forget the exact.
Yeah, the rebel. Yeah, the rebel group has surrendered, and the subs have been recalled. And
again, like, and then all of a sudden, like, all the tension between Denzel and Hackman just dies down. Hackman's like, you know what? No, and he gives yours. We're going to abort this launch, and then everybody cheers. Yay! Woo!
Yay! We didn't start World War III.
they also cheer when they blew up the Aquila. Because hey, we blew up a fucking submarine.
Yeah. So yeah, after this, then it cuts to Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
They're not on the sub anymore. They're standing in front of a tribunal at Pearl Harbor.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. You
got Ramsey and Hunter. But first off, so it shows the outside of the building first, and there's a sailor standing outside in the grass with Bear.
With Bear. Yep. We haven't seen Bear in a while, by the way.
And Bear's just sitting there in the grass, right next to a "Keep Off the Grass" sign.
Hey, his master is the captain of a submarine. Do you think he cares? Like, you know who my dad is?
Yeah, but what's funny is, like, it's not just Bear that's on the grass, but the sailor that's got his leash is on the grass too. They're standing. He's standing right next to a "Keep Off the Grass" sign, and I just thought that was funny.
What's funny, like, it's actually like a big thing. Like, if you go to like Annapolis, like once you get on the academy, like you can't be on the grass.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know how it's like all the bases, but at least at the academy, because your brother-in-law Steve, he's Navy, but was he didn't go to the academy, right?
No, he didn't go through not in Annapolis.
He didn't go to Annapolis.
He went through boot camp up at Great Lakes, and then he was stationed at Norfolk.
That's what I thought. Okay, I thought he was at Norfolk for a while. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't think he actually like graduated from Annapolis. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, no, that grass there in Annapolis, like, no, it's a big deal. You don't go on it. Yeah. I'm glad I kind of missed that point. I'm glad he brought that up. I missed that completely.
Yeah, so Ramsey and Hunter are inside in front of a tribunal, and they're basically
Jason Robards
they're basically being
chastised
about what went on in the sub.
And like, and Robards, like his character, like,
and he mentions that he's known Ramsey for almost 30 years.
They served together in Vietnam. Rear Admiral Anderson.
And so he's never known Ramsey to lie to him. So,
he's going to take his testimony seriously.
He's taking his testimony seriously. And, and Hunter, clearly does not agree with this, because.
And then Anderson cuts him off. But he says his little spiel.
And he's like, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go with Ramsey's recommendation to allow him his early retirement. And also, I'm going to follow his other recommendation of giving Lieutenant Commander Hunter his next command as soon as possible.
Good thing he shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to give you command, but I don't like it now. So, no.
So I love it. He looks at Hunter and he's like, "Do you have anything to say about this?"
Like, no.
"Do you agree with this decision?"
Yes.
It's like, "Yes, sir."
So now off the record. And then it's like,
Yeah, so he's like, off the record, you were both right about this, about what went on there. But also you were both wrong. So.
And then it's like, now, does he go back on the record after that?
Yeah, I think that might have been. Yeah, I think he might have done the off the record thing before he gave the final verdict on what he was doing on the going along with Ramsey's recommendations.
I'm gonna confirm it very quickly if I can, but I might not be able to.
But anyway.
But even before that, I forgot about that. We go back to the French aircraft carrier, the CNN reporter.
Yeah. He
gives a brief update to all the
people watching CNN in the kitchen while their kid is having a birthday party in the living room 10 feet away.
About how things have died down, essentially.
Anyway, so
off the record, you both create one hell of a mess. Yes, that's what it says. A mutiny aboard a United States nuclear submarine. Like, yeah, a mutiny aboard a nuclear submarine. Like, yeah, that's a mess. That's a very good point.
Yeah, so then
this is what it says. For the record, it is the conclusion of this panel that your actions aboard the Alabama were consistent with the best traditions of the Navy and the interests of the United States. Because, like, obviously, okay, this is actually what makes sense. Like, okay, the Navy is not gonna say to the public on the record that there was a mutiny on a nuclear submarine.
Yeah. And then a counter mutiny on the same submarine.
And then and then a standoff about what to do on said submarine. Right? And it's like, as such, the recommendations of this panel will be to accept, in a manner reflective of his long and dedicated service to his country, Captain Ramsey's request for retirement. And that's what gets into retirement. Yeah. And then his recommendation to give Hunter, the Lieutenant Commander Hunter, his next command at his earliest possible convenience. And that's when he finally says, unless you wish to challenge this.
Yeah, unless you wish to challenge this.
Like, no, sir. Probably his most proud no, sir he ever gave.
Probably.
Right?
Probably. Yeah. So then we have Ramsey and Hunter outside, and they're talking, and Ramsey tells Hunter, "You were right."
Well, first he's like, I wanted to thank you because you were right and I was wrong.
Yeah. He's like, I want to thank you because you were right and I was wrong about the horses. They are from Spain.
And I love Denzel gives a little Denzel smile. It's a full reconciliation between these two, right?
Yeah.
And then Ramsey gets Bear off the grass and he walks off. And that's the movie.
Yeah.
And there's one slight epilogue that says that as of January 1996, the president's the only person that's authorized to launch.
As of 1996, January 1996, the captain of a nuclear submarine is no longer authorized to launch. That auzation falls only with is held only by the president.
Anyway,
good movie. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie.
It is very enjoyable. Yeah. And again, and so much of it's initially we talked about Denzel and Hackman, but Viggo's great in this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other actors that are really good in this too. Small roles, they fit them perfectly and they play it well.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you reflect back on the entire situation, okay, it's implausible, but the acting, the directing of it, and the setting of it, they immerse you in it, and you get involved in it. And so, you don't care. It works out well. It's really good. So I think in terms of when we're looking back, it's a great example of Gene Hackman as an actor.
Yes, it is. I think it's a great choice for our tribute episode for him. Because, it really shows off his acting prowess.
It does. And as a result, Denzel's too.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about it earlier, he's not nominated for this movie, but I like it better than a lot of his nominated roles.
Yes.
Or performances.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, last week when it was announced that he had passed away, sadly, it's one of those movies that a lot of people brought up was Crimson Tide because he's so good in it. It's one of his later roles, and he's perfectly cast. Denzel's perfectly cast. It's good. If you've never seen it, I definitely recommend to watch it.
Yeah.
Again, is it the greatest movie or the excellent movie? Probably not, but it's enjoyable to watch.
It is. It really is. It's enjoyable. It's got great performances.
Especially if you like really good acting.
Yes.
The acting is what drives the tension and the drama and the action in this movie.
That's the thing, because there's not a lot of action in the movie as you would think about an action movie, right? But what drives it is their performances in these scenes, in these conflicts that are going on throughout the movie. The tension rises and you're on the edge of your seat just to see the resolution of these arguments that they're having.
Yeah. And, it includes a younger Viggo Mortensen and some other actors you mentioned. There's so much happening. And we talked about it as being very much a 90s movie. But then again, as we say, strongman Russians are back in the forefront of conversation again.
Yep.
And the tension's really more about two men and what to do. And that could be any type of situation and any type of war or brink of war situation. And that doesn't have a time period attached to it.
Yeah. It's not a dated movie, really.
No, not at all.
When you get into it. It starts out like every other 90s military movie.
Yes.
So it's real dated, but as the movie progresses, as the story progresses,
once it gets to the meat,
it could just as easily be on a nuclear sub today.
Right, absolutely. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't think I have anything else to really say about it. But
either.
I think we've gone pretty well with it.
Yeah. So that being said, if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram and Threads. We are Rob and Tony's Cinematic Adventure. The and is spelled out, A&D. It's not an ampersand like it is in the name of the podcast. We're also on X or Twitter. That is R&T Cinematic. And we are also on Letterboxd. So you can check out our reviews of various movies on there. Some we've done on the podcast, some we haven't done, some we will do, some we won't do. That is Cine Adventure or Cine Adventure, CINE Adventure. Then you can also send us an email at robandtonycinematicadventure@gmail.com. Once again, the and is spelled out. It's not an ampersand like the name of the podcast. But yeah, what did you think of Crimson Tide? Did you prefer U571 or K-19 the Widowmaker or Hunter Killer? Was
Das Boots?
Das Boot.
Wolfgang Peterson.
Yeah. What did you think of
Is this
Crimson
some
Tide?
submarine movie we forgot? Maybe.
I'm sure there is.
Down Periscope.
Down Periscope. Yeah. Let us know what you thought. Would you like us to do more submarine movies?
We haven't done a lot of war movies in general.
Yeah. You know, we want to hear from you. So also just go to your favorite social media outlet that we are on, or all of them, and
give us a like.
Give us a like and a follow. Comment on our stuff. Or go to your favorite podcast app wherever you're listening to us. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a good rating, a good review. That's how we move up in the standing and the rankings and the search and the recommendations, all that stuff, and help us find more listeners. But next week we're going to be doing, something. We just recently, a couple episodes ago, somewhat finished up our Oscar season, our Oscar series Best Pictures movies. But we have one more to add to that. So yeah, we took a couple episodes break from that, but our official end to our first Oscar series is going to be our next episode, where we are going to talk about we thought that a fitting conclusion to the Best Picture Oscar series.
We get that we got
it's
2
been a
episodes
couple of
between,
weeks,
but we're watching the ceremony and we figured, you know what the hell?
We should finish it off with the winner of this year's Oscars for Best Picture. So next week we're going to be talking about Anora, the movie that pretty much swept the Oscars.
Well, it won 5. It won the major Oscars.
It was nominated. Sean Baker won 4 of them.
He was nominated for.
Yeah, he won 4 of them. But
he did a lot of technical, not as much of the technical stuff.
Yeah, it was nominated for 6 and won 5. So that's a pretty good record for that.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
It's a pretty good run. 5 out of 6.
It's like a movie that's not going to be nominated for as many technical things.
Yeah.
I can't, there's no reason for it to be nominated for visual effects.
Yeah.
They only had a song that was nominated for, so.
Yeah, but this is a movie that neither of us has seen yet. So it'll be interesting to watch it, and I've heard good things about it. It won Best Picture.
I was slightly holding off on it because I figured it might win Best Picture, and then we might do it. And I thought maybe I should see it first for this episode. So that's part of the reason why I haven't watched it yet.
All right. So next time we're going to be talking about Anora, and you'll get to see our first discussion about it after both of us seeing it for the first time. So you get to find out if we agree with the Academy on whether it should have been Best Picture or not.
We'll discuss also these other wins, and maybe some of them deserved it, maybe some didn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. So anyway, join us next time for Anora.